Good morning, everyone. My name is Jinx, and I would like to personally thank you for tuning into the very first episode of The Fool Writes Again, the podcast where I discuss how I view the world as a writer, along with how I find inspiration and gather writing prompts for my everyday life and travels. For those of you who are interested in writing, and for those of you who are just avid readers and are curious where their favorite authors get their inspiration from, this is a podcast for you. Because I plan to talk about things such as plot building, world building, character creation, and even character motivation, among other things. And if you have an interest in any of that stuff, stay tuned. I hope you all enjoy it. With that being said, let's get the show on the road. Starting us off today, I have a couple scenarios for us. First one's this. Imagine you are sitting in a bar overlooking a city that's surrounded by volcanoes when all of a sudden, the volcanoes start to erupt. You are so focused on the chaos taking place in the streets that you don't notice that your own group of friends are breaking down in hysteria. What do you do next? Now picture this. You've had a very busy trip and want to settle down and relax with your friends. So you end up going to a new bar that someone recommended. But unbeknownst to you, your group chose the wrong bar and you all end up as part of a liver farm. Stuck in an endless cycle of having your liver cut out and letting it grow back. How does that story end? If that story is a little too morbid for you, here's another scenario. You just arrived in town, you don't know anyone, and you really just want to enjoy yourself. So you end up going to a bar that supposedly has a fantastic rooftop patio that is overlooking the city. You get up there, you notice there's a swing that sits two people and no one's there. So you sit down at it and you see an amazing sunset over this brand new city. While you're admiring the city, a cute individual comes down and sits next to you. You don't know where the story is going to go, but you strike up a conversation, and now you're in very much a romance story. Where does that story take you? And because I'm feeling generous today, I'll give you another one. You've just arrived in a very old town, lots of people there, and while you're walking down the streets and the alleyways, you come across a group of individuals who look to be up to very secretive things. And since you're a curious one, you decide to follow them. Not too close, but from a distance. You follow them through the alleys, and eventually they end up in a alley that has a bar in it. They go in. After a couple minutes, you go in, and you end up on this rooftop. You notice there's no one else in this bar except for the group you just followed, so they clearly know you followed them. And now that you've caught on to them, and they know this, they invite you over to their table, discuss what they're talking about, and you find out that they are explorers looking for the lost city of gold. And since you know too much, they hire you to tag along and carry their bags. Where does that story take you? Now, it might surprise you to find out that all four of these scenarios spawned from the exact same experience I had while backpacking across Peru. And let me talk about that a little bit. So as I just said, I backpacked across Peru, and I recently came back from there after spending a month in the country. I'd gone to the country by myself, joined up with a tour group, and 13 of us just explored. We started in Lima, took a bus to Nazca, then took an overnight bus to Arequipa. And once we got to Arequipa, we decided we wanted to explore the city because we had a lot of time on a bus and we were tired of it. So we broke up into little groups, toured around the city. We met up again for dinner, and a handful of us decided we weren't done partying. And we really didn't want to go back to our hotel quite yet because we weren't done partying, as I just said. So we asked our tour guide for a recommendation on a bar, and he gave us one. It didn't seem to be too far away, and it was within walking distance. So 7 of us set out after dinner to find this bar. And as I said, it didn't take us too long to get to where the address of the bar was located, though it was in a different part of the town than any of us had been so far, which was kind of cool. We got to explore more. But when we got to where the address was, all we saw was a brick wall. Nothing else that resembled a bar. Now, there had been a bar that we passed a couple hundred feet behind us on the other side of the street, and we thought to ourselves, maybe that's actually where it was. So more of us pulled up the address on our phones to see where it actually pointed it to. And no, it pointed to the same wall we were still standing at. Very curious about this, we decided to wander around a little bit. We walked to the other bar, one couple hundred feet back, to see if that was it. And yes, there was lots of lights and loud music playing, but that was not the bar. So we decided to walk down the street to see if we can find it. Mind you, we were in Peru and they speak Spanish, and it was very hard to read some of the signs and ask directions. There also weren't too many people out on the streets because this was a Wednesday night, and Peruvian nightlife is not very wild on a Wednesday night. It was only a handful of tourists really out there. So as we're walking down the street, all the other restaurant owners and employees and bartenders and stuff were coming out of the restaurants and bars to try to get us to go in. They'd walk out and say, "Hey, you want a table for 7?" Or, "Oh, it's happy hour with 7-for-1 drinks." And yes, that is a great deal, but none of those places were what we were looking for because we wanted a rooftop bar so a couple of our friends could smoke while there. And all these were indoor places. So we turned them all down and continued walking down the street until we eventually got to the end of the street and realized we still had not found the bar. Considering that, the 7 of us came to an agreement that we would do one more loop, and if we couldn't find it then, we would settle for one of the other bars just so we can get a drink and enjoy the party still. As luck would have it, we got to the top of the street and still no bar in sight. One of the very first employees we ran into, he came out of his restaurant and asked if we were looking for the specific bar. And we said yes. And he said, "Follow me." And we started following him down an alleyway. Mind you, it was not the smartest choice we made because we decided to follow a complete stranger in a foreign country. And on top of that, it was a person that we didn't really understand into an alleyway. Lots of flags were appearing then, but we still followed him because we were young and dumb. Eventually, he led us back to pretty much the exact same place we started at. The only difference was we were 10 feet further into the alley and there was a door there. And there was a little sign next to it that had the name of the bar. We spent so much time looking for this that if we had actually examined the initial spot, we would have found the bar. Now, we probably wouldn't have thought to ring the doorbell next to the door to try to get in, and the bartender did that for us. He rang the doorbell, and then a couple seconds later, the door swung open. And inside was just a hallway that ended with a staircase leading up. Nothing else. The 7 of us actually said, "This is how horror movies start." But again, being young and dumb, we still went in. As soon as we crossed the threshold, the door closed behind us, and I really hoped that it wouldn't be too much of an issue to leave this bar when we wanted to. But we walked in, went up the staircase. I noticed on that second floor there was a variety of rooms. One of them had what appeared to be a security guard just watching over a couple of surveillance cameras and televisions. One of them was pointed at the front door, so I imagine he's the one that actually let us in when the bartender rang the doorbell. Moving on from there, we found a second staircase leading up, and we followed that, and voila, we arrived at the bar. It was a very small bar in the shape of an L. There was about 7 tables in there. There was a swing that fit 2 people on one end, just overlooking the city. And at one end of the bar, there was a counter and what appeared to be a little kitchen. From what I saw, the kitchen could belong in an apartment building. It was that small. But we pushed a couple tables together, sat down, ordered a couple drinks. This is the very first time I ordered a beer in Peru. Every other time I'd ordered some kind of pisco cocktail. But being a little nervous at this bar because there was no one else there except for us 7 and a bartender, I wanted to get a drink that I could be relatively confident that they didn't tamper with because they would have to open the bottle in front of me. Was I being overly cautious? Yes, but it's still better to be safe than sorry. After a couple hours spent there, the 7 of us decided we wanted to go back to the hotel and we left easily enough. And there was no issue actually leaving the bar, but it was still fun and an interesting night and led to a fun story. So that bar is what spawned all 4 of the scenarios I provided earlier. My random romance story started in there, my adventure story started in there, my horror story started in there, and my disaster story started in there. And mind you, I'm not writing any of those stories. Those were just all plots that spawned from experiencing this, because that's what writers do. We look at things and we see stuff there. We ask random questions and stories appear with those random questions. You never know what happens wherever you go. I walked into a bar with 6 other people. I had no idea. I barely knew who they were. And I came out with a whole bunch of stories. And a lot of it's, again, because I asked questions. Going with my horror story example on the liver farm, I asked questions such as, what if the initial person we were following, the bartender, had an ulterior motive and wasn't actually leading us to a bar? We would never have actually known because we could barely understand him. None of us really spoke Spanish. What if our tour guide had a deal with that bar and they were trying to pawn us off? So he has a deal that he would send us so many tourists to them every so often and they would be able to get rid of us or find people for their liver farms. Mind you, the liver farm is a little grotesque in my mind even, but it was from a conversation I had at work one day with a coworker. And it kind of merged with this bar because it would have been a great setting for the liver farm. Going with my disaster story, that bar really was situated in a small town surrounded by lots of volcanoes. Arequipa has at least 3 volcanoes around it, and there was a lot more in the vicinity. And I was told that they have close to 5 or so earthquakes a day. Most of them are minor enough that you don't actually notice them. But going back with those what if questions, what if you're sitting up there and the volcanoes really do start to erupt? What are you going to do? Yes, it was a Wednesday night, but I imagine if there's a volcano eruption that everyone is going to flood into the streets. So if you're on top of the rooftop bar, you'll see everyone flood into it. Are you focused on the streets, or are you focused on your group of friends behind you and what they're doing? Are you concerned about what's going on? What if the lava and magma from the volcanoes carries over to you? What are you going to do? What if it stops before it even gets to town? Do you still feel safe? Are you going to leave? Are you going to go explore more? Are you going to try to go home? Don't know. The story hasn't been written yet. With my romance example, mind you, I don't really write this either because I'm primarily a horror writer, but I still think of romance plots because a good horror story still has romance in it. What if you're sitting up there watching the sunset and someone really does sit down next to you? Is it going to be a little meet cute like any of the Hallmark movies you see? Is it going to lead to a fantastic story when you two have grown old and you're telling your grandchildren how you met? Who did you meet? Is it someone from your tour group? Is it someone from the country itself? Is it someone from your country that you randomly met? All good questions. You just have to ask the major one. What if? And then going with my adventure story. This one's taken a little bit more inspiration too, because going through Peru, I learned that a lot of Spaniards went there looking for the lost city of gold because there was so much jungle and forest there. So what if you ended up as part of one of those groups? What if you encountered a secret group that was really looking for the lost city? Would you join in with them? Would you flee from them? Would they let you flee? Or would you have the missing key that they need to find the lost city? Again, the story hasn't been written. That's up to everyone else. I can't speak for everyone else because I'm not everyone else. But what I can say is I really like to create plots, and I create lots of them all the time. Most of them I won't write because I don't have that much time, and some of the stories will become very similar. So I merge plots together from different areas. But my best plots come from me actually experiencing the world because you should be writing what you know. If I had never gone to Peru, I would have never seen this little bar. I would never come across these 4 different story ideas, plus the other ones I'm actually writing about. I never would have done any of that because I wouldn't have known it. I would have never thought of it. So I'm taking inspiration from everything around me. Most writers take inspiration from everything. They may not necessarily realize it until later. They might connect the dots when they're dreaming or something like that, but something in the world sparked an idea and they use that idea to create a story. I'm doing the same thing, but I decided I'd actually talk about it. And it's also important to remember that not every plot point has to be a major scene. Some can be used to move your story forward a few pages. With the 4 examples I gave, there's a little mixture of them in there. The horror story, where you're part of the liver farm, that bar is a very major scene. You go in there and you potentially never leave it because you're part of it. You might have been moved into another room and you're not in the 3rd floor balcony, but the 2nd floor storage closet and being used to harvest your liver. So it's become a very major part of your, but other ones like the romance story and the adventure story, it's minor. The romance story, yes, you could technically stay in there for the entire story, but at the same time, it's really used just to meet the love of your life. Your character goes in there for a couple pages, meets the love of their life, and they leave and go on their life adventure together. On my adventure story, you can't find the lost city of gold sitting in a bar for 400 pages. It doesn't work. So you go into the bar and you meet the group of adventurers and then you leave. The bar was used to advance your plot a few pages. Other ones, like the disaster story, it could be either or. You could spend the entire story and novel in the bar trying to escape from it before the lava gets to you. Or you could be in it for a couple pages while you escape from the bar and now you're trying to escape from town and the country before the lava catches you. So it could be used for either. That's up to you on how you want to use it. And honestly, most stories and most plots can be either. I said the liver farm is 100% there. Not necessarily. You could write it where you go there, you get drugged, and then you get taken away 12 hours away and you're no longer at the bar. So it advanced it a couple pages. But that's up to you on how you want to plot it and what inspiration you take from it. Overall, that's the fun thing about being a writer. You control the story. You get to tell us what happens next. The readers, we're trying to figure it out. If we knew the story, if everyone knew the story, would we really want to read it? No. So create something unique based on what you experience in the world. I am. Now, before I start to wrap this up, I have a prompt for you. Tell a story about a group of 7 friends who traveled to a foreign country and ended up in a bar. What happens in that bar? I don't care what genre it is or if it's a short story or a novel-length story. All I care about is that you have fun with it and make it your own. But now I do have to call it a day. And before I officially wrap this up, I would like to say thank you again for listening to my podcast if you made it this far. If you did enjoy it, please like and subscribe. And if you have any writer friends, please send them my way. I'd love to have them listening. And be on the lookout for my next episode, which is going to be about world building in Peru. Again, thank you and have a good day.